Morning.
Morning.
Do we have any questions from yesterday, or how was your, for those of you that went out to dinner, how was your dinner?
Very pleasant.
Where did you go?
The brew house?
The brick house, yes.
Yeah.
That's the one that's on the water?
Yes.
Okay. What's the other one they go to?
The quay, or the ships and...
Did you have traditional Scottish food? High calories, high fat, high carbohydrate, low nutrition? Huh? Yeah. Glasgow has the highest, Scotland is famous for two reasons, a lot of reasons, other than inventing golf and William Wallace and a lot of stuff. But Dundee is the AIDS capital of Europe because of drugs, and Glasgow is the heart attack capital of the world. They have the highest cholesterol and the shortest lifespan for a male, which I think is 55 or 56, of any other city in the world. And if you go to Glasgow, they're hardy, plump-looking people. You can just imagine them in the movie Braveheart, running, screaming across the fields, or rolling across the fields to fight the English. And they always give you plenty of food. Plenty of food. The food is overlapping the plates. So for the faint of heart that don't want to live too long, you can eat in Glasgow. I'm sure I'll get a lot of negative emails from YouTube about that. Today we're going to continue on with the 7 principles of QLA that I developed in hindsight, looking back 20 years ago. We're on now, still creating your personal foundation was getting comfortable with success. Because unless you get comfortable with success, all the rest is just, I won't say useless, but it's certainly not, will not result in a measurable effect on your lifestyle, your business, your relationships. Now, I have a couple of mentees, long-term mentees, that say that QLA is better for losing weight than it is for increasing their business revenues, etc. I have a mentee that went from 335 pounds down to about 160 pounds using the same mindset. I've got a couple others, women, oddly enough, that did the same, that lost 100, 150 pounds using the getting comfortable with yourself, etc., looking in the mirror and liking what you see as opposed to not liking what you see, and a lot of other stuff. I'm not sure about that. I'm not here trying to sell it as a diet program. But I do know there's a number of people that say that if you use the same concepts about personal foundation in your life, in your relationships, yada yada. I haven't sold that. It's not going to be in my next book either. I don't imagine. But getting comfortable is important. Now today we're going to start on the role play after lunch, role plays. And it's apropos vis-a-vis your comfort zone, because some of you will be more comfortable talking, pitching, selling your idea either to a financial institution, a lawyer or an accounting firm than others. Some of you will be quite polished. In fact, some of you in this room I've seen before are quite polished at it, and were pretty polished at it when you got here the first time, let alone the second or third time now that you've been to the seminar. As I've said early on, you only have one time to make a first impression. And when you go to see these potential directors for your dream team, or financial institutions, or professional accounting, or law firms, you only have one time to make a first impression. And if you show up like Richard Branson, nothing against Richard, in a jogging suit, it's not going to make the same impression. And one of the things I say when we're in this section of the seminar, Getting Comfortable, many years ago, I had 5 mentees, and I used to call them the Mexican morons. And because they're all Hispanic, they all come from various forms of the barrio in Los Angeles or near Los Angeles, but they all managed to go to great schools. William and Mary, Harvard, Stanford, Berkeley. So they all somehow did something right. But then when they got out into the professional world, they started, because all those great schools do for you is they get you in the door. And then you've got to prove yourself. And they were going to have a negotiation on a Saturday morning. And they, with the principals and the accounting firm on the other side. I still remember who the accounting firm on the other side was. At that time it was a big 8 accounting firm. It was Coopers & Lybrand. It's now PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 4. And they were going to show up, and I told them to show up, since they didn't have any offices, I said, we'll show up at their office, and they make it 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Most people like to sleep in on a Saturday morning, myself included, but I don't normally know Saturday from Tuesday. But so they showed up, and they all wore their suits, and a couple of them wore 3-piece suits like I do, normally. And I said, and they said, well, it's Saturday morning. One of the guys said, well, isn't that going to make them feel uncomfortable? I said, yes! That's the whole fucking point. It's going to make them feel uncomfortable. So when I got there, one of the partners of Coopers & Lybrand was in his tennis shorts and had a tennis sweater, and he looked like he just came out of GQ magazine. Another guy was wearing a golf outfit, and the principal was just wearing a pair of jeans. My 5 Mexican morons were wearing their little business uniforms, and for the first 45 minutes, I wasn't there, for the first 45 minutes, they were apologizing for the way they were dressed. And I said, you're going to stay there until the deal is in principle agreed, and you sign some sort of letter of intent, memorandum of understanding, etc. And I got a call about 11:30, and he said, one of the guys has got to be on the tee at 1 o'clock, tee box, to play golf. I said, I don't care. Stretch it out, stretch it out, stretch it out. The closer you get to 1 o'clock, the higher the probability that the guy will cave and agree. So I got a phone call about 7:30, 8 o'clock that night, and they were drunk. They were calling me from Alvera Street. Alvera Street is a very famous place in Los Angeles where you eat Mexican food, and it's cheap. And they were drinking margaritas and etc. And they said, "You're right. They were right. The guy at 1 o'clock stayed till 3 because he could still get on the 10th tee and meet his party." And they caved to virtually all our demands. And these are 5 young kids, the Mexican morons, well educated, but they had to put the other side on the back foot. You only have one time to make a first impression, and when I go to meetings, I'm not. This is the third day of the seminar. Third day of the seminar. The first day of the seminar, I was dressed in my uniform. When I met you guys the first night, I was dressed in my uniform, which is my bob watch and my 3-piece suit. And it can't be emphasized enough. And I know today they wear jeans, and today they wear blazers, etc. But if you don't show up that way, they're always going to look at you differently. Now, we've gone through the, we're going to go through the test today, 16 questions, the success test, the pessimism test, and the optimism test. And as I told you, it only has about a 98 or so % correlation for success. We've already gone through your obituaries, and we've already gone through who you talked to on the phone. So we're getting towards where we're preparing you to be in a position to be able to talk to one another. And it's always interesting for me, because what I try to do is I try to put a rookie. Chip is pretty good at it. So I put a rookie with him, and then he beats up on a bank, or if he's the bank, they try to beat up on him. And I kind of sit back as a moderator and to make sure no violence occurs. But you'd be surprised that some of the people are better at this than you think, and some of the people that you think should be good at it aren't. But the end game is by the last day, you should all be pretty reasonable at it. pretty reasonable at it, so when you make your first appointment. And one of the things that I've emphasized about dream teams is that even if you're good at it, is you practice when you're trying to get a guy on the dream team, like Ricardo asked me yesterday, I believe it was, should I be formal with a guy or not formal with a guy? And I said, be formal, stay formal. He's talking to a guy, a partner in one of the big accounting firms, about being on the dream team. And it will get less formal as it goes on. But in some cases, in Germany, it's always Herr Doctor. I mean, it stays Herr Doctor, you know. Herr means Mr. Doctor, and it just stays that way. Occasionally it shifts. I never called Klaus Herr Doctor, but he called me Mr. Peña for a long, long time. He calls me hesitantly Dan now, but I mean, it's 16, 17 years later. So we're going to get comfortable with the process, and so by the time you go out, you'll be able to use it well. Now, for some of you that have already done some of these steps, because you've been here before, I'll ask you to share how successful it was. For example, when Michelle moved to London last October from the seminar, directly from the seminar, and I'll ask her to share how the Brits treated you, or English for the most part, treated her, and some of the questions they asked. And like we've discussed here since we met on our personal time, the first night, I believe it was, or the second night, I told her that some of the things that were the concerns of her model, and those concerns have come to fruition. So when I tell you, I know, you know, like I was reading your stuff again last night about the development you want to do, or you've already started and it's in the planning. Well, I've done that a jillion times, and so I know in different parts of the world, I know what some of the concerns some of the people are going to be, or not have. And so to take advantage of my experience, so you don't, make the same mistakes. Okay, if there's no questions, Ricardo, excuse me.
On the E-Myth model of working on your business versus in your business.
Correct.
I mean, is the goal for us to be working 100% of the time on the business?
No, but we get to that, but 95% of the time, the CEO, the founder, should be looking for deals, new business ideas, transactions, and money. Not managing the business. And that's what, Bavarian Bob over here, I beat him up about, because he doesn't trust anybody. And he's smarter than most of the people he deals with, so it's not like he doesn't like turning over things to people that can't do it as well as he can. And he can't find too many people to do it as well as he can, so he's got a dilemma. He's got a dilemma. But those of you that are control freaks, it's a problem. There's no question about it. It's a problem. For those of you, I'm anal about certain things. I'm anal about my health, my blood, but about running business, I'm not that anal. Because the reason why I'm not that anal is because I know that whether we make a mistake or not, it's not the end of the world. For my health, I'm more anal because if I make a mistake, maybe I'm dead. So I'm more concerned about my own personal well-being than I am a business transaction. Because I know we can do another one. We can find another this, another that, and so it's not as important. And by the way, just for the edification of the people on YouTube, E-Myth is a book, a very famous book written by Michael Gerber about 25 years ago, more or less. And he's got E-Myth 2 and I guess E-Myth 3 now. And it's a book that demonstrates that most entrepreneurs spend 99.9% of their time working in their business, putting out fires day to day, hour by hour. And they don't have enough time to grow the business. It's a great book. I know Michael. I've been up to his offices. I'm glad he's still around and writing another book. But I mean, essentially, he said it all in the E-Myth, the first book, because there was a great revelation. Why I can never get anything done? Why am I always up to my hips in mud? You know, trying to get things accomplished. A year ago, or more than a year ago, Koja, when he was in what I call the sex disco business, I mean, you can just imagine people coming in. He's got to keep people that are on drugs out, and and he never had time to grow the business. He never had time to look at the property end of his business, which is the part that he loves so much. So I told him that you got to do a joint venture. You got to do this. You got to get out. There's a famous scene in Godfather 2 or 3. I can't remember which. Where Al Pacino says, "They pulled me back in. I tried to get out." Well, most of you are pulled back in. Most of you are pulled back in. And so then the reservation you have is then when you decide that somebody in your key team isn't good enough and you're going to fire them, you say, Christ, now I'm going to get pulled back in really a lot because the guy that I turned over all this stuff to, or a lot of this stuff to, hasn't worked out. So do I get rid of him now? And my answer to that is always yes. Because there's no good time to make a hard decision. There's no good time to make a hard decision. Okay, Ricardo, did I answer your question?
What do you do with the other 5% of the time?
The other 5% of the time you are leading, you're being inspirational, you're exhibiting the leadership qualities that we've talked about, and you're looking for other key people. You're looking for key people. Because you can't grow a business without people. At the end of the day, all this is about people. At the end of the day. And they're going to look to you. They're going to look to you. And one of the reasons I was the first million mile guy, or the second million-mile guy on American Airlines back in the early 80s when they came up with these the club points, etc., is because I was always on a plane. I used to fly at least 20,000 miles a month. Now I fly 20,000 miles a quarter, or maybe not even that much. But before I was always on.
Excuse me.
And before, even though I didn't like the red eyes, I used to live on them because I could get a few hours sleep and get there and not waste the whole day traveling. Now I'm not as efficient with my time because I cherish the time I don't have. I don't have to look at texts or emails, etc. Although now you can do emails on planes. Now, I mean, so they pulled me back in. But for years, they didn't do that. And now there's a whole study that just came out that says all the time they've been telling you that you having your cell phone makes planes crash. It's bullshit. They don't make it crash. They just told you that. And so now certain airlines are allowing that to happen. But I still don't see that many people utilizing it. Because, you know, you have a few drinks, you want to take a nap, you relax, you just say forget about it. Any other questions? Okay.